Taehyung, Ryan, he said slowly, do you realize how distracting this is? Ryan, I was not trying to. You're being caught. Taehyung, you are always here. He continued, rubbing his temple, hovering, asking, waiting. It's Clingy. The word settled heavily between you. Taehyung, and honestly, he added, voice cooler now. It's annoying. Something inside you cracked. You didn't argue, didn't cry, didn't defend yourself. You simply nodded. Okay, you whispered. You picked up the coffee cup again, suddenly unsure why you did bought it in the first place, and walked out. Behind you, the door closed softly, and Taehyung returned to his work, unaware that he did just push something important past its limit. Bedroom. The room was dim, curtain half drawn. You sat on the edge of the bed, staring at your hand. They were trembling slightly. Though you had not noticed when it started, you waited for tears. They didn't come. Instead, there was a hollow feeling in your chest, as if your heart had gone quiet to protect itself. You whispered to the empty room, Ryan, if my presence bothers you, I will remove it. That night you didn't knock on his study door, you didn't ask about dinner. You didn't wait, you turned off the light and slept with your back facing the door. Taehyung came to bed much later. He noticed the untouched food on the table but dismissed it. You were properly upset. You did talk in the morning. You always did. He lay beside you, the familiar distance between your body feeling wider than usual. For the first time, your silence was not loud, it was final. Morning. Morning arrived gently, as if nothing had changed. Soft sunlight filtered throughout the curtain, touching the edge of the bed. The room was calm, still wrapped in sleep. Except you were already awake. You lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling. Normally, morning began with small rituals, turning to face him, watching him sleep, wondering if today he did wake up softer, warmer. Today you simply got up. Your movements were quite careful. You didn't want to take him, not out of consideration, but because you didn't feel the need to anymore. In the bathroom, you washed your face and tied your hair without humming, without thinking of him. When you stepped out, Taehyung was awake, sitting up and checking his phone. Taehyung, good morning, he said automatically, voice natural. You walked past him, didn't stop, didn't answer, didn't even look. He paused mid-scroll, the door to the bathroom closed softly behind you. The breakfast table. The kitchen felt larger than usual. Taehyung sat at the table, scanning through paper for his lecture. He waited unconcernedly for the sound of moving around, for the chatter of plates, for your voice asking if he wanted egg or toast. Nothing came. After a while, you entered the kitchen dressed neatly. Moment composed. You poured yourself a glass of water, take a slice of bread. You sat across from him. The silence was thick. Taehyung, you were not making breakfast today, he asked without looking up. Ryan, no, you replied simply. He finally raised his eyes. You were calm, not angry, not upset, just distance. You were being unusually quiet, he said. You took a sip of water, eyes lowered. I thought you need space, you said gently. So I am leaving it. Something tightened in his chest. He didn't know why that sentence bothered him so much. Taehyung picked up his bag and stood near the door, adjusting his coat. Usually, you did walk him out, straighten his collar, remind him to eat, tell him to drive safely. Today, you remained seated. He hesitated. Taehyung, I will be late, he said. You nodded once. Okay. No concern, no question, no complaint. He left the house with a strange feeling following him, one he didn't recognize yet. The lecture hall. The classroom was full. Taehyung stood at the podium, chalk in hand, the board behind him already half filled with notes. Taehyung, good morning, he said, voice steady. The student greeted him back. He began his lecture smoothly, word flowing from habit rather than through. He had done this hundreds of times before, but halfway through a sentence his gaze drifted to the window, to the sunlight, to nothing. For a brief moment his mind went home, to the kitchen table, to your calm eyes, to the absence of your voice. He stopped speaking. Sir, a student called hesitantly. Taehyung blinked, realizing the room was staring at him. Taehyung, yes, he said After a pause, sorry. He turned back to the board, jaw tightened. This had never happened before. That evening he come home to quiet house again. You were in the bedroom sitting by the window with a book in your lap, not reading, just staring outside. Taehyung, Ryan, he called. You didn't look at him. Taehyung, I didn't mean what I said yesterday the way it sounded, he added, unsure of his own word. You turned slowly. I know you said. That's why I won't bother you anymore. The word bother stayed with him long after you looked away. The house learned your silence before he did. You wake up early not to watch Taeyong sleep, but because your body had found a new rhythm. Morning were no longer about him. They were about getting through the day without shaking yourself. You made tea for yourself, only one cup. The kitchen light was still dim when Taeyong walked in, trying his watch. He paused. 2 cups used to sit on the counter always. Today there was only one. Taeyong, you didn't wake me, he said. You sucked lightly. You were sleeping. No apology, no guilt, just the statement. He watched you sip your tea, the steam brushing your face, and felt something unfamiliar, like he was introducing into your space now. That evening, Taeyong entered home earlier than usual, not because he said so, not because he planned it. He simply wanted to see you. The living room was empty. Your shoes were not by the door. His chest tightened. When you finally entered, key jiggling softly, you looked tired but peaceful. There was a tightness in your step he had not seen in a long time. Taeyong, you late, he said. You nodded. Ryan, I joined a writing workshop. The word join caught him off guard. Taeyong, you didn't tell me. You made his eyes briefly. Ryan, you didn't ask. Silence stretched between you again, but this time it was not yours alone. Day pass author point of view. You stop waiting for him. You stop timing your meal around his schedule. Stop asking about his lecture. Stop touching his arm. When you walk past Taeyong, notice everything. How you laughed softly at your phone now, how you stayed out longer, how you no longer looked at him when you entered the room. He stood in the doorway of the bedroom and watched you get ready. You nodded confidently, trying your hair, applying lipstick slowly. Not for him, Taeyong. You look different, he said. You paused, then smiled faintly at your reflection. I feel different. The word unsettled him more than he expected. That night he finally asked the question that had been forming quietly in his mind. Taeyong, are you upset with me? He asked. You looked up from your book. No, you said honestly. I was upset. I am not anymore. That was not comfort, that was distance. The room felt different at night. He noticed it when he reached out in his sleep and felt nothing. You had moved to the other side of the bed, not dramatically, just normally, naturally. Taeyong lay awake, staring at the ceiling for the first time. He wondered when did her silence stop being punishment and start being peace. Next evening. The evening air was cool when you stepped into the house. You closed the door gently behind you, leaning against it for a second, not out of exhaustion but contentment. Your back slipped down your shoulder as you exhaled, the kind of breath that comes after laughter still enjoyed faintly in your mind. The writing workshop had gone longer than expected, not because of time but because you had not wanted to end it. For the first time in months, you had spoken without measuring your words, shared piece of yourself without fear of being dismissed. Your phone vibrated in your hand, a message. You smiled before you even read it. That smile stayed with you as you walked further inside and Taeyong saw it. He was standing near the bookshelf pretending to read, but his attention had been on the door for a while now. When you entered, something about you felt lighter. Your shoulders were not tense. You were not searching for him. You didn't even notice him at first. That hurt more than he expected. Taeyong, you were in good mood, he said quietly. You looked up momentarily surprised, then nodded. It was a good day. That was all. No explanation, no invitation. You moved past him, the faint scent of perfume trailing behind you. Unfamiliar, not the one you usually wore for him. Taeyong remained still hard, beating heavier than usual. A good day, and he had not been part of it. Later that night, you sat curled on the couch, typing on your phone. Your finger moved quickly, effortlessly, as if you were in the middle of conversation that mattered. Taeyong watched from across the room, noticing things he had never cared about before. Your soft smile, the way you tucked your hair behind your ear when you read something amusing, how you didn't glance up at him even once. Taeyong, who are you talking to? He asked. The question come out sharper than intended. You paused then answered calmly, why a friend from the workshop. Something unpleasant stirred in his chest. A man? He asked. You looked at him then, not defensive, not surprised, just curious. Why? Yes. The room seemed to tighten around him. Taeyong, oh, he said. The single cell carried more weight than he wanted to admit. That night sleep didn't come easily. Taeyong lay awake, staring at the dark ceiling while your breathing remained slow, and even beside him, a friend, a man. He imagined someone else listening to you the way he never had, someone else noticing the way your voice softened when you spoke about things you loved, someone else making space for you. His jaw clenched. Jealousy was not loud, it didn't announce itself, it settled quietly in his chest, heavy and uncomfortable like guilt mixed with fear. He used to tell me everything, he thought. Now she was not telling him anything at all. The next morning, Taeyong stood in the doorway as you slipped on your shoes. Taeyong, will you be late again? He asked. You paused, thinking. Why? I don't know, you said honestly, and that was the problem. There was a time when your schedule revolved around his. Now he didn't know where you were going or when you were becoming, and you walked out the door clicking shut behind you. Taeyong stayed where he was. For the first time, the house felt too big, and for the first time, a thought settled uncomfortably in his mind. What if I don't get you back? The house had learned to live with silence, but tonight, in this silence, felt different, tight, restless, unfinished. Taeyong sat at the dining table long after his food had gone cold. His paper lay untouched, his glass abandoned beside them. He kept glancing toward the hallway, waiting for a sound that didn't come. When you finally stepped out of the bedroom, he straightened unconsciously. You were dressed simply, hair loose, face bare, beautiful in a way that didn't ask for permission. Taeyong, Wayan, he said before you could pass him. You stopped, didn't turn around. Wayan, yes. The word was not soft, but it was not sharp either. It was tired. Taeyong stood chair, scraping softly against the floor. Taeyong, you have changed, he said. You turned slowly, meeting his eyes. The distance between you felt wider than the room. Yes, you replied. I had to. Something flickered across his face, confusion, frustration, something dangerously close to regret. Taeyong, you don't talk to me anymore, he said. You don't. He stopped, exhaling sharply. You don't look at me the same. You watched him carefully, as if choosing your word from a place long buried. Ryan, yes, I used to look at you like you were everything, you said quietly, and when you called that annoying, I learned how to stop. The word didn't sound angry, they sound final. Taeyong, that's not what I mean. You gave a small, sad smile. Ryan, you don't mean to hurt me, you said, but you did respectfully, and I kept making excuse for you. Taeyong opened his mouth, then closed it again because for once there was nothing logically to say. Bayan, you think I didn't notice? You continued, voice steady but trembling underneath. How you sighed when I spoke, how you looked relieved when I left the room, how loving me felt like a task you had to manage. His chest tightened. Ryan, I never asked for a grand gesture, you said. I just wanted to feel wanted. The word wanted landed heavily between you. Taeyong ran a hand through his hair, pacing once before stopping in front of you. Taeyong, I didn't know, he said, voice lower now. I thought you understand me. Ryan, I did, you replied softly. That's why I stayed quiet for so long. That was when it hit him. Your silence had not been sudden, it had been earned. Taeyong, you were pulling away, he said almost accusingly, almost pleading. You met his gaze, eyes glossy but strong. No, you corrected him. I stopped chasing. The room felt unbearably still. You took a breath, studying her yourself. Do you know what hurt the most? You ask. Not your coldness, but how normal it became for you to see me sing and do nothing. Taeyong felt something twisted painfully inside him. Ryan, I loved you loudly, you said. And when that became too much for you, I learned to love quietly, then not at all. He looked at you, then not as his wife, not as someone familiar, but as someone he might lose. Taeyong, I don't want to lose you, he said, voice breaking just slightly. You looked at him for a long moment. Then you said the word that frightened him more than anger ever could. I don't know if that's enough anymore. You didn't slam the door, you didn't cry in front of him, you simply turned, walked back to the bedroom and closed the door gently behind you. That softness, the lack of drama hurt him more than any outburst could have. Taehyung remained standing in the middle of the room long after your footsteps faded. The air felt heavier now, like the house itself was holding its breath. He sat down slowly, elbow resting on his knees, head bowed. For the first time in years, there was no lecture to prepare, no problem to solve, no schedule to follow, just the enjoy of your word. I stopped chasing. Sleep didn't come that night. Taeyong moved through the house restlessly, lighting flicking on off as he passed room. He suddenly noticed for the first time the kitchen where you used to stand asleep here messy, asking if he wanted sugar in his coffee, even though you already knew the answer. The couch when you curled into yourself during movie he never fully watched. The study where you used to knock softly before entering up, afraid of interrupting him, afraid of being unwanted. His chest tightened. How had he missed it all? Or worse, how had he noticed and chosen comfort over her? He sat at his desk, finger hovering over his laptop, but the screen stayed dark. Instead, memory surfaced uninvited. You standing in the doorway, waiting patiently while he worked. You asking, am I disturb you? In a half joking voice that now felt painfully honest. He swallowed hard. You had not been clumsy, you had been lonely, and he had been the one person who was supposed to. Near down, Taeyong sat on the edge of the bed. You were asleep, turned away from him, you breathing slow, and even there was a space between you now, not just physically but emotionally. He reached out in then stopped. For the first time, he was afraid to touch you, afraid that even his this simple familiar gesture might no longer belong to him. Taeyong, I'm sorry, he whispered into the quiet room. The word felt small, insufficient. You didn't stare, and that scared him more than anything else had. The morning passed quietly, not the heavy silence of before, but a careful one, like walking across thin glass. Taeyong woke before you did. He lay still for a few seconds, listening to your breathing, steady and even. For once, he didn't reach for his phone, didn't think about his schedule. Instead, he watched the space between us. When he finally get up, he moved slowly through the house, unsure of where he fit now. In the kitchen, he stood staring the counter longer than necessary. Then, awkwardly, he made tea 2 cups. He carried them to the table, sat down, and waiting. You entered the kitchen a little later, hair still damp, eyes tired. You froze when you saw the second cup. Taeyong cleared his throat. Taeyong, I made tea. You looked at him, then at the cup. Thank you, you said quietly. You sat across from him, wrapping your hand around the warmth. He didn't speak, didn't rush to explain himself, and somehow that restraint meant that evening you sat on the couch with your laptop, typing slowly. Taeyong hovered nearby, uncertain, then finally sat at the far end. Taeyong, what are you writing? He asked. Your finger paused. A piece from the workshop. He nodded. Can I read it someday? You glanced at him, surprised. Why and someday? You enjoyed. He accepted that, not insisted, not sulking, just patient. Later that night, as you prepared for bed, Taeyong stood near the doorway. Taeyong, I know saying sorry isn't enough, he said, voice low, so I won't say it again unless I can prove it. You met his gaze. That was not dramatic, that was honest. Ryan, I'm not ready to be the way I was before, you said carefully. Taeyong, I know, he replied. I'm not asking you to. When the light went out, you lay side by side, not touching but not turned away either. Taeyong stared at the ceiling, heart steady but uncertain. Change was not loud. It was made of morning like this, conversation that didn't demand resolution, love that waited, and maybe, just maybe, that was how he did learn to reach you again. The day had been long for Taehyung, lecture back to back, facility meeting dragged longer than planned, question he didn't have the patience for. By the time evening arrived, sat heavy on his shoulder, familiar and sharp. This was the version of him you remembered too well. The man who come home drained and distant, the man who retreated inward when life was too hard. When he entered the house, he loosened his tie and dropped his bag near the door. You were not in the living room. The quiet shouldn't have startled him, but it did. You were in the bedroom, phone resting beside you on the bed. It buzzed softly, a message from Taeyong. Are you home? You read it, then turn back to your laptop. You meant to reply truly, but your thought drifted, finger returning to the key. Time slipped. When he finally found you an hour later, the light from your skin illuminated your face. You looked focused, peaceful. He stood there longer than he needed to. Taeyong, you didn't reply, he said. You looked up, started. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't notice. Something in his chest tightened, that familiar voice, that one that used to guide him, whispered. She's slipping away again, Taeyong. I was talking to you, he said, sharper than intended. You straightened slightly. I didn't ignore you on purpose. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Taeyong, you disappeared into your own world now, he said. You don't tell me where you are, who you are with. The room felt colder. You closed your laptop slowly. Taeyong, you said carefully. This is what you asked for once. Remember, the word landed harder than he expected. Taeyong, I didn't mean, he started. But it sounded the same. You interrupted quietly. Not angry, just honest, and that honesty scared him. The old pattern made it familiar and dangerous. Him withdrawing, you sinking. But this time something changed. Taeyong took a breath, a real one. Taeyong, I am scared, he admitted suddenly. That's if I don't know everything, I will lose you. You studied him when really studied him. Why? I won't stay if I have to disappear again, you said softly, but I won't leave just because you are afraid. That was the line, clear, firm, loving. And for the first time, he didn't cross it. Taeyong nodded slowly. Taeyong, you're right, he said. I slipped. You didn't soften intensely, but you didn't harden either. I need consistency, you said, not apologies. Taeyong, I know, he replied. I am learning. Later that night, you sat on opposite side of the bed, tired, emotionally spent. But when the lights went out, either of you turned away. Healing didn't erase mistake. It taught you how to stop before repeating them. Morning arrived gently. Sunlight slipped through the curtain, pale and soft, resting on the edge of the room like it belonged there. The world outside moved slowly, unhurried, as if it knew this day didn't need to rush. You woke to the sound of breathing beside you, not distant, not guarded, present. Taeyong lay on his side, facing you, eyes already open. He didn't pretend to sleep when he noticed you staring. Taeyong, good morning, he said quietly. You smiled, small but real. Good morning. There was no tension in the space between you now, no unsaid word pressing against your chest, just calm. In the kitchen, you stood together, shoulder to shoulder, moving around each other without hesitation. Taeyong reached for the cup. You felt the kettle at one point. Your finger pressed. Neither of you pulled away. Taeyong, I have a meeting later, he said, but I will be home by evening. You nodded. I will be here. Not as a promise, as a choice. Life didn't push you healing. Taeyong still went to work. You still wrote. The word remained loud and demanding, but now it didn't come between you. That evening you sat together on the couch reading quietly. No need for conversation, no fear of boredom. Your head rested against his shoulder. He adjusted carefully not to disturb you. This was intimacy, not urgency, not position, just comfort. Later, when the bedroom was dark and quiet again, Taeyong reached for you, not desperately, not hesitantly, sure. His hand rested at your waist, grounding rather than claiming. Taeyong, I am still learning, he murmured. So am I, you replied. Taeyong's forehead rested against his. There was warmth in his closeness, not heat, not need, but something steadier, something that could last. That night, as sleep pulled you both under, Taeyong's voice broke the quiet one last time. Taeyong, thank you, he said softly. You smiled into the darkness. For what, Taeyong? For not giving up on us, he said. You thought about it for a moment. I didn't. You said we just learned how to speak again. His arm tightened slightly around you, and for the first time in a long while, silence was not something to fear. It was peaceful. Thank you so much for watching patiently.